This is Miss Nelson coming at you today. This past week, you have been reading a couple of chapters of A City of Ember, and I hope you're enjoying it as you go. This past week, we've been talking about setting and how the setting can impact the characters. You've also been doing a couple character maps with Lina and Doon to figure out some of their characteristics. Now, what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about Lina and Doon's relationship and compare and contrast the characters and see how they're alike and how they're different. Now, remember that the way that we see the characters right now at the beginning of a story is probably going to be different than how we view them at the end or in the middle. We remember this because the past week we talked about character changes and how characters change over time. And that's totally true with the City of Ember as well. Lina and Doon may look one way for us this week, but their relationship and how we view them as individuals will probably change as we read. Now, what I have in front of me here are some characteristics that you have written in your character maps, some of my favorites, and I am going to put them in this Venn diagram. I'm sure you've seen one of these before. There are differences that are going to go on the outside. So how Lina is different from Doon is going to go in Lina's box, and how Doon is different from Lina is going to go in Doon's box. What's going to go in the middle is how they're alike. And we'll see over time that how they're alike and how they're different really impacts their relationship as characters. So we're going to start with Lina first. Some of my favorite characteristics that you did for Lina, I have 4 here. And one was responsible. I totally agree that Lina is responsible. As we know, she lives with her grandmother, and she takes care of Poppy most of the time. She's really having to be like the mother figure for Poppy, her little sister. Another one that we did that I liked was self-reliant. What this means, if you don't know, is that Lina really has to take care of herself, and she relies on herself in order to do what's best for her family. She does most of the cooking, most of the cleaning. Again, she takes care of her little sister, because as we see later in the story, her grandmother really isn't that helpful and really can't be for their family. Another one that you did was independent. I like this one quite a bit, and I think that this could actually fall along for a lot of the characters in the City of Ember. As we know, children start working at the age of 12, so imagine, when you turn 12, which will be this year, right, or next year, you'll have to start working and have your own job in the city, and that's pretty crazy to think about, but Lina is very independent. She knows what job she wants, and she's willing to go after it to do what's best for her family. The last one we have is attentive. Attentive. Lina, as you saw, is very respectful towards her teachers. She's very respectful towards authority figures of the city, like the mayor. And she just really sits there and listens and pays attention, and she respects them. So I think attentive would be a really great character trait for Lina. Now, I know that there's way more, but this is probably where we're going to stop right now. I think that this is a big difference from Doon, which we'll see here in a minute. Lina is responsible, self-reliant, independent, attentive. You would say that she's a pretty good person. And she follows the rules. She's a rule follower, and she really just does what she needs to do what's best for her family. Now, if you haven't yet, make sure that you're writing this down in your reader's notebook on the next page. And if you want to add some at the bottom here, go for it. There is tons of space here for more character traits. Now let's move on to Doon. So Doon is kind of somewhat the opposite of Lina. Some of my favorites that y'all wrote down were, one was mischievous. As you see, he is the opposite of Lina when it comes to being attentive and a rule follower, right? He kind of is okay with getting in trouble. He's a risk taker, and he kind of says what's on his mind, regardless of if he's going to get in trouble for it or not. So mischievous is a really good word to describe Doon. Another one would be angry. We see pretty early in the story that Doon does have some anger issues. He doesn't really know how to communicate his anger pretty well. He throws things. He gets, kind of flustered and hot and heavy, like hot, and gets throwing things and yelling at his dad. He does not know how to communicate how he feels really well. And he's also pretty angry with the mayor and the government of the city because he kind of thinks that they're not doing a good job. The next one that y'all wrote was really good, was curious. As you see, he traded jobs with Lina to go down into the pipeworks because he wants to explore them. He has a kind of like a strategy or like kind of like a theory of what's happening in the city, and he wants to go explore and figure it out for himself. So curious is a very good characteristic for him as well. And then the last one that a lot of us used was outspoken. Again, he speaks his mind. In the classroom when the mayor was there, he had no problem sharing his thoughts, even though it made the mayor pretty angry. So he is very outspoken. He does not keep his mouth shut, whereas I think Lina probably would keep it more to herself. So we see here the differences between our two characters. Lina is more like, the rule follower and a good citizen, whereas Doon is kind of, the anti-rule follower and very outspoken and protests and gets angry, and he's going to speak what's on his mind. So a pretty big difference between the two. However, there are some similarities. A couple that I think we could do is determined. Whether it be that Lina is determined to be a messenger, or Doon is determined to speak his mind or figure out the problem with the electricity, they are very much on a hunt to get what they want, and they're going to do whatever it takes. Another one I think we could do in the middle here is hardworking. Again, we kind of spoke earlier about how students graduate from school and get a job at 12, and I don't think that if they weren't hardworking, that would be something that could be done. But I think both of them are willing to go to work and do what needs to be done to take care of their families. Another one is eager. I think this describes both characters, but in different ways, kind of like how determined did. Lina is very eager to start her job. It's kind of been her life's mission. Whereas Doon is very eager to get down into the pipeworks and figure out the mystery that he's searching for. And the last one that I think that they're on the same page is worried. They're both aware of the blackouts going on in the city. It's no secret. And even though Doon is more worried about how things can go horribly wrong and how the problem needs to be fixed, I think Lina's more worried about how the outcome is going to be if the lights do go out for her family. So even though they are both worried about the same problem, I think they're worried for different reasons. So we have a lot of similarities between Lina and Doon, and we have a lot of differences. However, I want you to keep in mind that characters do change, and that their similarities and differences are going to show up in their relationship with each other throughout the story, and definitely throughout the plot, the problem and the solution. So before you leave today, I want to leave you with one question. I'm going to write it down, and I want you to answer it in your notebook. How do you think the character's relationship will affect the story? Okay? How do you think the character's relationship will affect the story? I'm going to write it down here, and I want you to write this below your diagram, or maybe even in the next page of your notebook. Okay? Think about how Lina and Doon, their relationship, is going to either make the problem worse or the problem better. Or there'll be challenges along the way because they are so different. Or they work together because they are so similar. Well, that's a question that we can't answer right now. We got to keep reading. So go ahead and go on to the next chapter. I hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you soon. Bye, Knights.